Hello everyone, welcome to another video. I'm attempting something a bit different today, which will be very apparent when my challenge is accepted. I'm doing casual games, so it will not affect my rating. Actually, I may as well play a 5-minute game. And have you guessed what it is? It is blindfold chess. I'm probably very unsuccessfully going to do a video on blindfold chess. Try and explain as I go, but I may end up losing all my concentration and losing really fast. Alright, so we've got an English opening. Feel free if you want to skip to the point in the video where I'm analysing after the match, if you don't want to follow along. So playing c4, e5, all the four knights are out. Then white's played e4, which is a bit random, so bishop c5. I'm trying to trade lots and lots of pieces. Okay, perfect, they've done the fork trick. Then that's bishop f2. Loses my bishop pair but forces the king out, which is good for me. It takes e5. So equal materials, d4. Now I start to fall apart. Let's see, those have come out. e4's been played, so their c4 pawn is protected by the f1 bishop. I could go knight to g4 check. It's certainly a move. No, knight c6. I think they've got, yeah, they've got all of their, they've got ED and C pawns all on the 4th rank. Knight on c3. Luckily I can scroll through the moves just to make sure. Yeah, they haven't played g3 or bishop g2. Yeah. e5, attacking my knight on f6. I could even castle here. Yeah, why not? Let's make it interesting. Castle. Pawn takes knight is obviously the move. So I'm going to pre-move queen takes knight straight back. Their king is still on f2, so they're going to block the check. And I'm thinking their d4 pawn is dropping as well. So I'm sacking my knight for 2 pawns. And they have a weak king. So queen f3, I am not going to trade queens. Check. Bishop e3, yeah, their knight's still on c3. So let's go queen e5. I think I'm safe there. And I've got a pawn on d7, which is not so good because I want to develop. And they have naturally offered the trade of queens. Alright, let's go d6 to protect myself. Hopefully my sack will be worth it. So I've now got a knight on e5. I'm trying knight g4 to trade off the bishop pair that they have. Bishop e2, I should still be able to play it, I think, knight g4, because I've got a bishop on c8 that can recapture. Yeah. So they're essentially, this is what's good with the trading. They've got a knight on d5, which is the only sort of good piece they have. The extra piece, essentially. They've got a bishop on e3, knight on d5, and I've got a bishop on g4. Then we've got all our rooks hanging around. Put their knight back on c3, okay. They've got a pawn on c4 as well, so let's bring the bishop back to e6, so it's safe. Yeah, b3 to defend everything. Rook f d8 maybe, and I'm trying to play d5 and trade off more stuff. Rook a d1, so I go d5, takes, bishop takes, I'm losing. I don't know, a5, that prevents a7 being hit by the bishop. Rook d4, so they're trying to double up on the d file, I think. Does a4 do anything? That's the critical line. I don't think it does. Looks like I'm losing the pawn. Strange though, the bishop's on e3, so it's not very good bishop at the moment. b5 doesn't do a lot, does it? Okay, let's go a4. It's probably a terrible move objectively, but it might cause them some problems. If they take me, I have stuff like b5. They go on rook hd1 to hit d6. Alright, well I may as well trade some pawns off the board. And then I was looking at rook a3, but maybe rook a3, rook takes d6, rook takes, rook takes, rook takes, and then they mate me at the end. Maybe I go d5. I know I lose the pawn, but it just helps me trade off lots of pieces, and I don't need to concentrate so much. So they're going to take me. I will take them with the bishop, I guess. Take the rook. So they have a pawn on b3. Okay, let's just trade rooks. Yeah, so we both have b pawns. They have h and g. I have h, g, and f. They have a bishop on e3. That's the difference. Okay, so to avoid mate, let's go g6. Rook d7 to take the pawn. Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know, b5. I'm hoping they go rook a7. That'll make life very easy. Oh, bishop h6. So they're preventing me from using my king. That's a bit annoying. Alright, so the rook goes somewhere. Where's their rook? d7. Let's go rook c8. Rook b7. Okay, so they're going to take the pawn, potentially. f5 maybe? Try and give my king some safety squares. Rook takes b5. Okay, so I'm not getting mated. At least not yet. Ooh, I'm low on time. Rook c3 to hit the pawn, but their rook's defending it, so it's not too good for me. Rook b7 to come back. I don't know. I check them and come back. King g3, rook c3, king h4. I don't know, rook c2 again. King h3, check them. Just keep checking. My king can't move. This is not good. Okay, rook back to c2. b4. Okay, rook behind the pawn. Yeah, this ain't looking good. Rook b3. I think I just totally lost, but I have to try. Rook b5. I don't know. King h4. I don't know. f4 maybe. Try and get some tricks. Bishop takes f4 is unfortunately correct. King's on g4 now. h4, h5 check. King goes to h3, I assume. Oh, f3. Okay, fine. Rook b3 check. Bishop e3. No. King e4. I'm down to like a few seconds, so I've lost on time. Okay, alright. So if you didn't want to just look at an empty board for a few minutes, here's the actual game. I played it very, very badly, but in my defense, I was looking at the whole game blind, and I'm playing a 22-40. Totally blind here. So, yeah, they do this just fork trick. So the idea is that if I take with the knight d4, which I've seen many times, so in blindfold chess you often do have to kind of recognize patterns a lot. So this is quite a well-known pattern. So I do this move to essentially weaken their king. Yeah, d4, knight c6, e5. So white definitely has a lot of play here. That's why I sacked. And got the two pawns for the piece. White's two bishops should be good here. And then naturally he trades, or she trades. And I wanted to get the bishops off with knight g4. Still clearly worse, but at least I had something. And again, to reiterate, I want to trade as many pieces as I can, which is not very good when you're behind, but I can't. It's much, much harder to keep the sort of mental image in your head when there's all these pieces on the board. And to be honest, blindfold chess, it doesn't seem to be linked to actual chess ability. Obviously, your playing strength will be different, but there are some masters who just can't really do it, or they have immense difficulty playing blindfolded. But then there are other players who are sort of 1600 or lower rated who can do it just fine. So it just looks, it looks cool sometimes if you can do this, but it doesn't seem to be linked to playing strength. So yeah, I thought maybe bishop b6 was good, but yeah, rook d4 surprised me. It's a very nice move though. And this a4 move probably is awful. I was thinking if knight takes b5, and I might have traded pawns. So takes. Now here's probably the critical moment. I mean, I'm clearly worse anyway, but possibly it's something better than what I did, but I just can't see it. I just thought rook a3 would be not very good, but maybe I can do rook a3. This might be what I missed. Rook a3 here, and then maybe I just shuffle the rook to like f8. I don't think white can defend the pawn. So that's what I missed in the game. I missed rook f8. I think any other rook move is a bit slow. And the evaluation is probably still like +2 or something, but it's... Oh wow, more than that, way more than that, +4. Okay, so I'm totally lost anyway. That might have been a better chance. So I sacked the pawn, or gambited the pawn, whatever you want to call it, just so that I could not be totally lost. Maybe f6 or h6 was better here actually, because this gave him the weakness on the dark squares. Bishop h6, very, very useful move to completely block me out, and the rest of the moves are essentially me just shuffling around doing nothing. And yeah, just running around with the rook doing nothing. No, I tried for if pawn takes, I could go rook h5 check, forking the king and bishop, but to be honest, I probably lose anyway because their b6 pawn is so far advanced. So yeah, did a few checks, nothing came of it, and ran out of time, but would have resigned anyway. Alright, so that was that game. I'll see if I can get another one. Maybe I'll do a few games of this. Maybe if I can win one, I'll stop and declare this experiment a success. What I've done is, because it's a casual game, I don't lose racing points. Oh, there we go. Okay, I was about to have a 3-minute game. Perfect. Okay, 1900. E4. So we're going into a... Okay, they've done e5. Alright, time for the Vienna, knight c3. The openings are not usually too bad. If you have a good memory, you can just picture the opening in your head. It's usually the middle game that's the toughest area. I'll try the Frankenstein Dracula. I'm hoping they do knight takes e4. And then I can go queen h5 and just absolute insanity happens. Ah, the bishop c5. Okay, never mind. I will have to settle for something not as interesting. d3 is solid. Then, yeah, c6 is a bit weird, but it's a move. Knight f3, just play normally. Both my knights are out. Whoops. E1 to G1 castles. Yes, my knights are out, bishop's on c4, pawn on d3. So, bishop g5 pin. It's much easier for me to remember where my pieces are, not so much his ones, or her ones. b5, very strange move. Bishop runs back to b3, where I'm safe. My pawn's on d3, so e4 is not so much attacked. He's going for my bishop, so a4 prevents them playing a4. b4 hitting my knight, so knight to e2. Trying to go to f5 with the knight. Bishop g4 pin, sort of. Knight g3 helps me out. h6 is a move, but I'm thinking bishop e3 might be okay. Knight bd7, okay. h3 just to try and trade pieces. Queen takes f3 if they take me. Oh, bishop e6. So this move potentially pointing at my bishop. I could play knight h5. I'm not sure how good that is. I'm going to go knight to h4, I think. Yeah, let's do this. Knight to h4. So my knights are going to jump into to f5. And maybe h5 as well, depending on my mood. I'm going to double my own pawns, which is not so hot, but to be honest, yeah, bishop takes b3, I'll take back with the pawn. So I've got a strange pawn structure. I've got pawns on b2, b3, a4. They've got pawns on a5 and b4, c6. h6 hits the bishop. I can't really run too far away, but I'm going to play something strange, maybe. Actually, maybe not. Bishop e3 looks interesting. Yeah, let's go for it, bishop e3. So if they take me with their bishop on c5, I can recapture, and that way all the bishops will have been traded. So again, that removes a lot of concentration power that's required. I'm aware that my knight on h4 might be dropping. Oh, they've done knight to e4. Yeah, that makes sense. They are attempting. They're trying to hit the hit my knight with the queen. I'm not too scared of that though. I like queen g4 in these positions, to be honest. Let's go for it. I'm probably making some huge blunder. Queen g4. Oh, knight knight d to f6. Knight d f6. They've won a pawn for nothing. Yeah, okay, pawn takes knight then. Now, I have a plan. I'm hoping they do bishop takes bishop on c5 to e3, and then I'll play knight h to f5, gain a tempo on the bishop. If queen takes h4, I'm going to go knight f5 anyway, I expect. Yeah, okay, knight f5. And I've got a pawn on h3. Their queen's nearly trapped, but not quite, not really. Where are they going to put their queen? Queen f6, possibly? Oh, queen to d4. That is a move. Yeah, that is something they could do. I didn't realise. Huh, yeah. Yeah, that is a move. Alright, okay, well... Okay, bishop takes c5 then. I assume knight takes c5 is going to be played by them. Oh, it's from d7. Then we just have a knight and a queen and pawns and rooks each, so it's less effort now. Knight e7 check is interesting that I could play. Knight takes c5 naturally. I actually take the pawn with my knight, so I hit their queen on the square, e4. So I've got a knight on d6, they've got a knight on c5. My queen's in its starting position, their queen's on e4. All our rooks are basically in the position they started in. Alright, so queen there offers to trade the queens, but I'm going to go knight to f5. I believe they still have a pawn on e5, or at least I hope they do. I'm threatening knight e7 check, which is a cheapo. They might do queen takes queen, so they can take on b3 with their c5 knight, which makes sense. I was hoping I'd get the rook on d7 in the future and gain some initiative. I think they've still got a pawn on rook fe8. Yes, rook fe8 prevents me doing that thing. But that lets me keep the queens on. Alright, queen g4 then. I believe their queen's on d5. So I'm threatening queen takes g7 mate. And h6 is dropping, potentially. They do have g6, potentially, as well. So what am I down by? I lost the e-pawn. I think I'm just down the e-pawn. Yeah, they played knight e6 to prevent the mate. So yeah, okay. Knight takes h6 check. King goes to f8, I assume. No, king h7. Okay. Knight takes f7. Because their queen's on d5, but their knight's just moved to e6, so they don't have a way to capture my knight. I I think. Their rooks are on A8 and E8. Mine are on F1 and A1. So queen takes B3 is a move? No, rook F8. Ooh, I nearly have mate, but I don't quite. Oh wait. Rook F8's been played, so yeah, queen takes E6. Oh, they have rook takes F7. That's really annoying. I thought I had a win. If queen takes queen, then I go knight G5 check, and I win the queen. But they have rook takes F7, which actually saves them. Yeah, rook takes F7. All right. So where next? I've got 3 pawns. They've got those. Their pawn structure is really bad. But so's mine. All right, queen G4. Keep the queens on. I'm going to lose the B3 pawn though, that's the downside, but I'm hoping that I still have initiative. Maybe rook A D1 or something, or rook A E1. Yeah, rook A D1 makes sense. Their A8 rook is rubbish, and my rooks are still rubbish. Still have chances to fight back. Rook F6, okay. So queen G4, rook F6, interesting move. F6. Okay, well rook F E1 potentially. Oh, I see. They're going for rook G6. Okay, rook A D1 hitting the queen then. If queen takes B3, I have queen H5 check, and then I win the E5 pawn. Maybe, hopefully. They've only got a pawn on G7 on their king side. All the other 2 pawns have been removed. Rook F6. I also have rook D7. So queen takes there. Yeah, interesting. I also have rook to D7 as a move. My queen's on G4, isn't it? Okay, queen H5 check. That forces their king to move, or their rook, naturally. I want their king on H7, I think. So queen takes E5. I actually want their king on H7, not on, say, H8, where it's a bit safer. So they still have pawns on C6, B7, A7. I've got pawns on... Oh, no, not A7, sorry. C6, A5, B4. I've got pawns on B2, A4, so they're going to drop. But I have 3 against 1 on the king side. I've got pawns on F2, G2, H3, and they've got a pawn on G7. So it's dynamically about level. And I'm hoping that I can go rook D7 in the next move or two and sort of aim at their king. Maybe I get something. Rook F8 has been played. I don't understand that move, but I probably will quite soon. Okay, rook D7. I should have a rook on F1, so I don't see the threats. I mean, I've got a mate on G7. That's not going to happen, I don't think. Sort of hoping that I can go Queen E4 fairly soon. Rook F6. So I don't have Queen takes G7, right? Got it. So Queen E4 is a move. Their queen is on B3. What about my other rook? I can't move the other rook. Other rook is bad. So Queen E4 check. So I have to be very careful here, because I'm guessing they're going to go rook F G6. Yeah, rook F G6. They're threatening takes on H3, so I'm going to go rook D3 to prevent the queen taking on H3. My queen's going to take on A4, I expect. No, Queen E6, trading queens. Alright, fine. Rook takes. Then Rook fd1. c5, yeah, okay. Let's go b3. So we've got a locked-in pawn chain with that extra c5 pawn. And that pawn's zigzagging. And I've got the 3 against 1 on the king side. Their rooks, yeah, we're on e6 and f6. Where do I want my rooks? I don't know. I don't know. Rook d5. Hit the pawn on c5. Rook e2. Okay, so they're hitting f1. Let's be lame and play rook f1. Rook's on e2 and f6, I think. Hope they are. Wow, complicated game. Not what I want at all. Rook c2, so they're saving the pawn. Right, time to start shoving my own pawns up the board. I'll try and go king to rook f3. Oh, winning the pawn, yeah, naturally. Okay, king g3. King g2, I mean. Rook c to c3. I see, so they're defending their king, yeah. Okay, so rook e1. Defending their rooks, I mean. Rook to e1. Rook takes h3 is what I assume. Rook takes c5, is that a move? Let's say it is. Let's hope it is. King takes... Oh wait, they haven't done... Ooh. Rook rook hd3, okay. Oh, okay, so then I have rook check. Maybe. Maybe not. King g8, yeah. Okay, rook check. Over. Now my rook's attack, that's not good. Okay, back to e5. I'm hitting the a5 pawn, I think. Rook d6, okay. Where's their king? It's on f7. Okay, so let's check them on f5. Rook f6, then take on a5. Rook takes b3, gotcha. Pawn g5, is that working? Put them in check. Come back to b3. Come back to b5. Rook b1. Okay, a5. Okay. So my king can't leave too far away. Where's the king? King's on g6, so I can't really go f4 yet. Maybe I can. I don't know. Let's go f4. I think I'm okay. b2. Okay, now I can't do anything. All right. So a6. They're going to go rook to a1, right? Yeah, rook to a1, then rook takes b2, rook takes b6. No, a6, I mean. King g3. I don't really want to draw yet, but I might have to take one fairly soon. I think their king's on g6, isn't it? I think their king's on g6, and my pawns are on f4, g5. So, rook to a5. Check. And if rook takes, I have rook b6 check, and I win. I hope. King f7, okay, rook b7 check. Okay, king f8, success. King h5. I'm hoping this is a win, because I know they have rook takes f5. Actually, I think it is a draw. Yeah, it's a draw, I think, because the knight pawn is not usually winning. Yeah, I've messed it up and drawn. Oh well. Still not that easy. I can still try. Where's the rook? It's on a5, isn't it? So rook takes g7. Try my best. Rook a6 check. King h7 ideally. It's not that easy to draw when you're black. Rook to a1. Okay, so rook to b7. The king's on e8, isn't it? Rook h1. King g7. Then g6. Might get Lucina, actually. I might get a Lucina position. Complicated. Rook f1, so rook f7. Let's build the bridge. Rook g1, yes, okay. Then rook f4. Rook a1, okay, so rook e4, that will get the king to d7, I think. King f7. Check, yeah, we're just in a Lucina position here. And g7 is going to come next. Yeah, Lucina. And then rook to h4, king e6. Yeah, I think it's a win. Rook h4. Now I go king h8 next move. Or king e8. Yeah. King h8, then I make the queen. It's much, much easier when there's only 3 pieces or so on the board. Rook to a1. And he resigned. Okay, fantastic. Alright. So let's have a look at this game. I think I might end the video in a few minutes because that took a lot out of me, playing 72 moves completely blind. Right, let's have a look at the game, how bad it was. So the Vienna opening, yeah, I was hoping for knight takes pawn. c5, d3, c6, knight f3. Yeah, so the c6 pawn's a bit of a weird observer in the match. It's quite solid though. It prevents me ever going knight d5 and hitting his f6 pinned knight, and also like a perk, you try and shove the b pawns up the board, gain space. So I think maybe a3 is better, but I can't remember the line. So a4, b4, knight e2, yeah, bishop g4 pinning. So yeah, this knight g3 move is quite a common idea to play knight f5. And knight bd7, very, very solid for black. They can try and do some sort of marshal with the our d pawns kind of shoving up the board, but I didn't really want to do that because that's too complicated. So h3, I just assumed bishop takes knight was the only move. I didn't see bishop e6. I don't really want to trade because the f8 rook could become powerful. So this knight h4 I think is a mistake. I should probably do knight to f5 or even knight h5 and trade off pieces. So bishop takes, pawn takes. My pawn structure is really ugly, which it remains so for a long time. Yeah, maybe I should have traded off and just played simple. Yeah, bishop takes knight and then play knight f5. But I wanted to try and gain initiative by opening up the f-file if they took my bishop. Yeah, and they won the pawn with this. So yeah, the line that I'd been hoping for was when I took with the pawn, yeah, I was hoping for bishop takes bishop, so then I could play knight to f5. And if we count the material, they sacked a piece a move ago with knight takes e4, and I've just sacked it straight back, so the material is equal. And if they want to save the d6 pawn, or at least make a show of it, bishop c5, and I thought I might have had either queen g4 or knight to h5, just making the game really, really sort of attacking and difficult. I can always take on d6 though if I need. But yeah, queen h4, knight f5. I completely missed that e4 was dropping. I forgot that I didn't have a d3 pawn anymore. And also, in these games, I'm sure you've worked out that your opponent does have sight of the board. Blindfold is an option you can use in Lichess. So, as an experiment, I've played today's games blindfolded, but my opponents, at least as far as I know, have seen the board. I highly doubt there are many players as ridiculous as me playing blindfolded against 2,000 level or 1,900 level opponents. So yeah, knight c5. If they did pawn takes, they'd lose the d7 knight. So yeah, I took. They went queen d5. I came back. I think maybe they should trade queens and then take on b3, but they wanted to improve their pieces. So queen g4, knight e6, stopping me mating them. And rook e8 was to stop knight e7. Yeah, so I was quite confident here, but then I sort of started to realise that after this rook f7 bolt from the blue that I hadn't seen at first, black's actually starting to get quite active with the trade of knights. And actually, maybe my game wasn't as bad as I thought. I sort of thought I must be missing something, but I seem to be covering all the threats and playing fairly reasonable moves. I mean, I haven't yet seen any like massive tactics I've missed, where I've just left something hanging or missed a really easy move. And maybe that's a testament to how badly I play normally. So rook here. I definitely think I must have messed up the rook and pawn ending somewhere, because I seem to be very, very passive after rook f1. I'm not really sure what else I could do apart from rook f1 in that position, but I must have missed something. Because, now I must be worse here after rook f3. Yeah, king g2, rook c3. Maybe here I should take on c5. Maybe that was the key move. Maybe if I take on c5, rook takes c5, king takes f3, rook c3 check. Like maybe king f4 or something, and perhaps I have something, but I don't know, their b4 pawn just looks so good. Rook e1, so I tried getting activity for myself, and then did rook takes c5. And the plus side was that if they took on c5, which I thought they were going to do, king takes h3, and then if rook c3 check, I have rook e3, saving me at the end. And they can't trade because I'm pawn up. So I have managed to win the material back. Rook hd3 surprised me. I thought they were going to take on b3. And have I missed something here? This feels like I should have something, but I couldn't analyse it too long, partly because of the blitz pacing, but also because I can't keep the image in my head for indefinitely. Okay, so rook takes a5 or rook h5 are the best moves, which one of those I played. It felt like in these sort of positions, I always feel like I should have a mating net, but I don't really have enough forces on the ground to play this out. Yeah, rook d6 was, to me, a bit weird. I assume they wanted to block the checks, but I think that allowed me to, coordinate my pieces quite well and, secure an advantage in some way. So yeah, we got this position with, what was it, rook to f5. So I'm pretty sure that they did offer a draw, and I wanted to win, basically. I wanted to sort of massage my ego. So with this f4 move, I secured g5, but I think this must be drawn with accurate play. And perhaps a6 isn't needed, but I just thought that it was essentially forcing black to make the decision. And I can't really move my king anywhere. There's the classic... I could move to h2, actually, but there's the classic trick with king f2, rook h1, and it's a win, because after rook takes b2, they skewer the king and rook as such. So I kind of had to make a move, and I couldn't see much better than a6. So yeah, rook a1, they have to catch my pawns, so we catch each other's. King g3 to sort of secure my pawns, and I think it was around now they offered me the draw, and I was just hoping that I'd seen the position in my head correctly. So yeah, this is basically the openings and the end games. I find fairly easy because there's only about 4 or 5 pieces on the board. But yeah, the middle games are just so difficult to play in blindfold, at least for me. And I have this little tactic f5. So yeah, if rook takes f5, rook b6 check, and they lose the rook. So they came back, rook b7, king f8. So this is a curious position. I feel like it's probably like better for white. I think it's a position you can't rush, so it quite likes the move like rook b1 for some reason. I assume rook b4 can't be awful. Black does something, let's say rook c5, passing their go. Because I want to play king h5, but I'm not sure I can get away with it, because like king f7, and if I go king h5, I just feel like they might be able to come round, and I can't play king g6, which would be the winning move if I was able to play it. And f6, I don't think is any good, because they can trade. If I take with the pawn, they win the pawn later, and if I take with the rook, it's a knight pawn ending, and it's a draw. So I'm not sure what the correct method to win there is. I should know these endings a lot better than I do. So in this position, my instinct does say it should be better for white, but it's so difficult to arrange. And if black does nothing, say rook c5. Oh, now king h5 is apparently +2. I'm not sure. Why is this different than the game position? I'm not sure. Maybe it's no different. Maybe I did find the winning plan. Let's play king h5 anyway. It doesn't look any different. In fact, we get basically the same position. So yeah, maybe my idea was correct. Sacrifice the pawn in order to activate the king. So rook a5. Then I think maybe the check is inaccurate here because it allows king g8. I think that was a mistake. Yeah, rook to b8 check is much better. I think rook f7 will be level, or barely any better. Yeah, it's a mistake. King g8 is just a draw. Get in front of the pawn. So rook b8 prevents the king getting in front. What I missed was king takes g7, rook takes g5. But what I can do is play rook to g8 and then take the pawn with the rook, so I don't lose g5. Anyway, enough of the computer. So yeah, rook f7. They misplayed it. I took. If I'd done king takes, rook takes g5, draw. Check, king h7, have to come forwards. And I came across, and I mean, maybe king f8 is challenging me. I don't know. I thought king f8 might be annoying. Again, I said a moment ago I was finished with the computer, but I seem to be falling back in love with it. I don't really know, because g6 blunder, rook at h1 mate. So, okay, so rook b8. King f7 can't be played because g6 check. So king here, and then I can play like g6 or king g7. Yeah, then I win. Or much better. Yeah, because I can't get the king in front of the pawn. Okay, so it's still lost anyway. And I probably would have played that because I'm a patzer, and patzers see checks and do checks all the time. So yeah, rook g1, and now this is a Lucina position where I essentially cut the black king off by at least one file. And the traditional way of winning this, I'm cutting it off by 2 files now, is to essentially, yeah, shuffle the king so it's on the promotion square and get the pawn 1 square away. And then you do the classic, what they call build a bridge. So the classic building the bridge technique is when you bring your king out, black has to keep checking you, and check again, and king f6. And if black checks again, you win easily. And if rook g2, you just play like rook e5. And black does nothing, and then you build the bridge, and you disconnect the rook from the pawn. So you then promote in the next turn or so. And if black keeps checking you, after king f6, rook f1, you just make it to the bridge in time with rook g1 check, and again use the rook to block their one. And their king is just too far away to catch the pawn at the end. So that's the traditional method, but the method I use, if the king, the key point is if their king is there's 2 files that are empty between the king and the pawn, like this, two empty files. What you can do that I find easier, to be honest, it takes fewer moves, is just to play rook h4. And then that way you can bring your king, so you build a bridge to your king instead. So that way there's no checks, and then you can promote. So after rook a1, I was about to promote to a queen when they resigned. So overall, interesting match. matches, I should say, because I played the other one. Hope you got something from this video, and if you want to see more Blindfold games of mine, leave a comment and say so. Otherwise, I may not do this too often because it's extremely draining. Anyway, see you in the next video. Bye.